Hey, everybody. I just want to let you know that during this episode, Kate's audio is a little bit shaky, but the episode is so good that I bet you'll barely even notice that. You'll be fine. All right, here we go.
It's rough out there, in the world. Some of us turn to writing for solace and inspiration. Text that helps us take in the dark and find the light. So if you are someone who wraps themselves in words to warm your heart, or maybe just looking for a little help getting through the day, week, year, join us as we talk to people about the pieces of writing they use to bolster their souls and remember their way. The good bones that remind us we can make this place beautiful. Hello, and welcome to the Finding Good Bones podcast. I am Kate, one of your hosts.
I am Amy, your other host.
And welcome to, as we said before, this podcast.
Good start.
Thank you. It felt powerful, and so I was like, oh, the patriarchy didn't like that. Let me make it a little bit more demure. Just kidding. Amy.
Yes.
What are you reading?
Well, I just finished 2 novels in a new series by Margot. Starts with a D, then there are 4 vowels, then there's an H and a Y. So I looked it up, and that may be do we he. Anyway, it's about a nun who solves crimes, and I mentioned this to you.
Yes.
And you said, "Ugh, nuns," and I was like, "No, this is a scary nun." So
I'm not sorry. It's just that I want all nuns to have sex.
Oh well, she doesn't anymore, but she tells you all about before. So
okay, but
yeah.
It's not that I want to hear about it. I just want them to have it in their lives.
Oh yeah,
she
has lived.
But
she has lived.
So you know what? That's probably a good loophole. I just think that sex is important, and not everybody has to have it all the time. But like, I just think that you could be like a holy person and still have sex. In fact, I don't know. According to some traditions, like the act of sex is a holy ritual. But anyway, nuns can be scary.
Solving crimes.
Solving crimes.
Yeah.
Love the solving crimes. Along the same lines, it's not exactly along the same lines, but I finished the second book in a trilogy. I actually don't know how many books there will be. It just came out. And I'm very sad because I read it and I don't know when the next one does come out. This one's called Sunbringer. And it is by, Hannah I think it's Hannah Khanna, but I will double check on that. The first book was called God Killer, and this is the second book. And it's a really interesting conception of like what gods are. It kind of picks up from the Neil Gaiman American Gods idea that like our God is created by belief. This one has slightly more specific rules of like, it's got to have a shrine, like X number of followers and a shrine and things like that. But then, there've been a lot of wars, obviously. And now the people have like outlawed gods in this one place and they also murdered them. And so, so there's this whole, like, actually the main protagonist is main protagonist. No, there's more than one protagonist. Anyhow, there's a whole profession around killing gods because you can kill them because like gods are both immortal and mortal. So anyway,
that sounds cool. I think I'll read that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I will, just let me know. So Finding Good Bones, and I forgot to put this in my little spiel at the beginning, we are a podcast all about the pieces of writing and text that help us sit with the dark and look to the light. And we have a wonderful guest today who is a well-known improviser and actor here in Austin. And now he can also add, or has added, musician. And I've heard him play music. So yeah, I can vet that. Based here, he's definitely like Austin, Texas famous. He is. He is. Kareem Badr is definitely Austin. He's won awards, y'all. He has won real awards. He portrayed the tortured Salieri in Amadeus, the terrified actor in Woman in Black, and the traumatized Nasrullah in Heartland. And I, dear listener, actually had the opportunity to see two of those, and I tried to see the other one, but it was sold out. He is a co-owner of the Hideout Theater and has performed and toured with his improv troupe, Pigraph, since 2005. Hey, Kareem.
Hello.
How
Thank
did
you.
that feel?
That felt embarrassing and fantastic all at the same time.
Yay, that's the vibe we were going for.
So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
I brought a selection from the novel Hell's Half Acre by Will Christopher Baer. I'm getting cozy with the idea that time is circular, that lost time will come back. Behold, I find myself outside in the final minutes before dark falls over California, and I'm confronted by an apocalyptic sunset. The odds of this happening today and not tomorrow seem astronomical, or anyway, too staggering for my small brain to contemplate right now. The hills before me are splattered with some kind of freak sunlight that appears to exist on a physical plane but is forever shifting from one form to another and is therefore impossible to contain. If only I had an instant camera, then I would never need to step outside again. I despise cameras, though. They butcher your memories, and anyway, when you're an old man drooling yellow shit down the front of your pajamas and your eyes are long gone, what good is a box full of shitty snapshots that have turned green with age? Nothing is real to me anymore. The world around me has been systematically reconceived through digital imaging and computer animation, until every flower and raindrop is pure and flawless as the flowers and raindrops of the book of Genesis. The new world is brought to life in high-density pixels and is then transferred to human memory. The digital sunset always looks better than the real thing, always. Because a sunset generated by the basic package of yellow sun and blue sky is unreliable. Today, it may be stunning, hypnotic. Tomorrow, it may be lifeless and dull, a white sky scorched with yellow. Tomorrow, the sky will be velvet. Beautiful or not, it disappears. The sky goes dark, and what are you left with? The image stored in my head suffers rapid decay, and within hours I will be unable to describe the sunset that I've just witnessed without accessing the false but technically perfect sunsets that I've seen on 1,000 television and computer screens. I have no personal memories that are untainted by media and marketing, and I often suspect that I am dead but still functioning. My heart is raw and pink, a package of ground beef wrapped in plastic. My body is composed of shatterproof glass and fluoride and vitamins and sheep hormones and recycled copper wires. There is no poetry in such a being, but neither is there fear. I tumble easily into the void, and I am safe as a kitten in the bony confines of my own skull. If I can afford the proper software, then I can download anything imaginable. The physical world is getting less and less realistic by the minute, and eventually I will learn to pay it no mind.
That is an actor's voice, what we just heard.
And I love it.
Uh-huh.
Love it with my whole heart. And I think we need it. I think we need an actor's voice, particularly with that piece of text, because it's a lot to take in. So
it is a lot. It is.
Yeah.
The author is a lot, and that's part of what I love about him. Have loved about him. Me picking this is the immediate piece I wanted to read, or the book I thought about when you asked me here, and this is also the first one that I immediately rejected because it's too obvious. Because this book is 21 or 22 years old, maybe 22 years old, and when I first read it, it reconfigured my brain, and I thrust it on anyone who would listen, and I still love it. Love his writing. Yeah.
That was one of the first questions that I wanted to ask is what time period is this from? Because
Yeah.
it does feel, at first when it was talking about the instant cameras and the snapshots,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, is this older?
So 2004, it came out in 2004.
Yeah. But
It's crazy because it's pre-iPhone.
exactly.
And everything he says is more true now than when he wrote it.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Especially,
I find that very fascinating.
especially when actually I think there's another layer on it too when we think about AI and everything that's happening with art to where now it's not even photo editing necessarily, right? Because with photo editing, you're drawing out what's really there, right?
Literally being fabricated.
Actually being
Yeah.
fabricated. So he
Yeah.
is quite is it prescient? Like
Yeah. I agree.
He manages to tap in, but it's still like this is clearly still written in that time where the phone and the computers have moved forward, but
Yeah.
what is significant about the iPhone is that's when we get a legitimate camera. And so he's still thinking in like not exactly kind of Polaroids, but still like
And what I love about his writing and I mean, so it's a neo-noir, clearly. The narrator is in various states of unreliable and untrusting of reality and his own perceptions of reality in and out of mental institutions. He's just a wreck. What I love about his writing is that it's beautiful prose. Like it's very dense.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, I realized it made me reflect on, why do I like this? And
it's literally one of our questions for you.
And like, what is the stuff I like? Because I don't allow myself to like something without being able to like unpack it and think about it. And I realized that like the thread that goes through almost all the art that I love that really strikes me and sits with me is that it's basically terrible things expressed beautifully. Like, I was like, oh yeah, that's there are definitely people that don't can't deal with that, or it doesn't hit them, or they're just like, but the characters are awful. Why would you like this? I'm like, I don't know, because some of these sentences are beautiful, and there's something wonderful about that.
Because they're enjoyably awful.
Yeah.
Like they are wonderfully terrible. It's and I think as an actor, I know you've gotten the opportunity, I have as well, to play somebody awful.
Yeah.
And absolutely relish in getting to be awful with essentially no consequences to my own personal life. And I think that there can be absolute enjoyment in the awful. This is incredibly visceral, right? And I love, actually, the first thing that I think really struck me about it was the phrase apocalyptic sunset. At first, because I was trying to figure this out, and I'm like, ooh, is it a real apocalypse? Nope, nope, just a descriptor. But I love that phrase, and it brought back like not California, but hill country sunsets that I have seen. And then he goes on to describe how they're not as great, and I'm like, oh,
yeah. It's like, or are they ones you saw, or are they now? Have they been replaced with the photos you've seen of similar things? I mean, that's a very real human experience right now.
Yeah,
for a long time. I mean, memory is remarkably fallible.
I mean, beyond just the photos, right?
Yeah.
There's something too around. One of the things that I've read about telling stories and relating memories is you don't necessarily remember what happened as much as you remember the last time you told it.
Yeah.
And
you're both playing the record and cutting the groove at the same time.
Oh, that's lovely.
I like that.
That should be in a...
Write it down. Somebody write it down.
I also... It's very... He's speaking from a very existential place, but at the same time, he's going very deeply human. I think particularly around the old man drooling yellow shit down the front of your pajamas.
Yeah, he's dismissing aging and the process of dying, like he's just off. And then that's part of what I like about this is like on its surface, and this is true of noir in general, but especially this very well written prose. On the surface, it's you could see it as cynical, but it's also there's something about it that's very fatalistic. and accepting almost. And I don't know if this is, of course I'm reading it and bringing myself to it. So that's, the lens I read it through now. But it's like the sentence really struck me, because I hadn't read this in a while. But the sentence that really popped out this time was, beautiful or not, it disappears. Which is like, well, there's life.
Yeah.
And,
the sky goes dark, and what are you left with?
That's right. And that, and as someone who's, as I get older, I've gravitated more and more towards, classical stoicism, because it makes sense to me. That sentence is like, that's it. Like you have to know and accept that it's all going to go away, and that's fine. It's neither positive nor negative. It just is. And that's, I don't know. There's something really interesting about that.
I also find in noir, it is very fatalistic, but not unlike what we like with this podcast. They're always so hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back in particular to, just the archetype of the grizzled old private investigator, right? Mm. The old PI who's like, I've seen a dozen of these dames, but maybe this one's different.
That's exactly it. That's it. And and this book, talking about noir, like this book is the reason not the reason I like noir, but this is the book that made me go, oh, this is neo-noir? Wait, I like noir. And I stumble backwards, and as you know, because you've known me for a long time, I am full on into it. I'm all in. And one of the things that I love about noir, on its surface, it's stereotypically, cynical, but it at its heart is a character who is a hopeless romantic, because every experience he's had should tell him to not trust the situation and the person that he's about to encounter. But maybe this one.
It's one of the reasons why I love noir, because it's sneakily hopeful.
Yeah,
right?
He has to have that little kernel of hope that's wrapped in the black heart. It's not optimism, right?
And I think that's a big difference between optimism and hopeful, right? Because optimism, you believe it will be better. And with hope, you just understand that there's a chance and you're willing to take it.
Yeah. Numbers.
Speaking, right, exactly. I wish I understood odds at all. I've had people try to explain them in detail, and then I'm like, ooh, no, just stop, because I don't get it. Speaking of, so how did you find this book? Do you remember? It's very clearly a part of kind of your own aesthetic and literary appreciation.
I have an interesting path to finding this book. So this is the third book in the series. This is the third and final book in the series about this main character. This was the first one I read, and the way it happened is...
What's his name?
The name of the character is Phineas Poe.
Of course it is.
It's the name of the lead.
Love it. Yeah.
The books are fantastic.
So this is the last one, but you found it.
I found it.
First.
So the way I found it is, way back when, 22 years ago, or I don't know how long ago it was, I kind of stumbled my way into being part of the technical team that was curating and working on Chuck Palahniuk's website, author of Fight Club.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
So I was working on Chuck Palahniuk's website. Like many men in their 20s of a certain age, I read Fight Club and was like, but mostly for the writing. I actually understood that it was satire, but I went all in on Chuck Palahniuk at the time, which I'm slightly embarrassed about because I've not really read him since. But anyway, it got me reading again, which is great. And so the guy who was running his website emailed me one day. He said, or maybe he called me. He said, hey, there's another author that I want to work on the website for. Are you interested in doing it? I was like, I don't want to do a website for some other random author. I'm not like a web designer. That's not my passion. No. And so then 3 days later, I said no. And then 3 days later, the advanced reader copy of Hell's Half Acre showed up in my mailbox. I read one page and I read one paragraph, the opening paragraph, which is, I almost read that one. I read the opening paragraph, slammed the book shut and screamed, God damn it, at my ceiling, because it was so good. The writing was so good. And so I emailed. I was like, "Fine, yeah, I'll do this guy's website." And I devoured the book, and then I found the first 2 books and read them. And so this book was thrust on me. This author was thrust on me, and it really stuck with me. It really stuck with me. So that's a unique way of discovering an author.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I've never been so impressed that I slammed it down and yelled.
Oh, I screamed. The first paragraph, I was like, "God damn, these sentences are so effective."
You hadn't really, had you kind of taken a pause? Have you always been a reader, or is that?
So I don't know that I can call myself a reader, and that's because I read painfully slowly. I've always read, but I read so slowly that it often, I mean, not so slowly, but I cannot help but read at almost the same pace that I would read it out loud, which is kind of slow. Like, I know people just like flip through books. Like, I know I read pretty slowly. So I hadn't been a reader, and I certainly, like, through college, I was not a reader because there's so much stuff you have to read. But, like, I wasn't reading for pleasure, and that the kind of after college discovering Chuck Palahniuk was kind of that opening the door again to, like, oh, actually I like reading. I enjoy this, and but I think that the fact that I read slowly is part of what draws me to authors who are very efficient and like very tight with their language in ways that I really appreciate. Like, 1 or 2 sentences that just paint such a vivid image in your head, with like the perfect least amount of words necessary to get it out.
I also appreciate that in a playwright.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a poet. No, we've talked about that before, about the sparseness when it can be sparse, right? And at the same time do everything that it set out to do. Right. And there's not a phrase that I come back to, and it actually goes back to a play that I watched as part of the New Works Fest and a million years ago. And we left and someone was like, there's not an extra word in that play. Everything that was said had to be there. And so I come back to that phrase all the time with pieces where I'm like, wow, there was nothing extra in there. Everything was used. And so, but it means a lot actually when you say that you devoured this book then, because like I'll devour a book on like a Tuesday night. Because it also sounds like you weren't necessarily, like, I was definitely a kid that was like, well, I don't need friends, I have books. Or maybe it was like,
I wasn't quite one of those kids. I mean, I read, for some reason, I just read Huckleberry Finn like in 4th grade. I'm sure a lot of it went over my head, but but I think that was me just like, being the smart kid who does what smart kids do and read the book that, but I wasn't like an avid reader who would get lost in books. Again, it was one of those things that, like, I wish I had been. I would probably be a lot smarter.
Let me promise that some of what you had in your head might just be your mom's weird fantasy books that are definitely not age appropriate.
Yeah.
So don't beat yourself up at all, because I also don't think the speed at which you read determines whether or not, like, you are a reader, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think you can remember your visceral reaction to a book that you love when you read it for the first time, like and you can describe it in a way that takes me there. So I think that you're certainly a reader.
I'm a selective reader. That's
perfect. Now, so this struck you. Have you followed the authors? And remind me of his name.
Will Christopher Baer.
Yeah.
Baer. Yeah.
Has he lived up to like the impact of this, or you'd mentioned a bit about him?
So he's an interesting cat. He kind of slipped off the radar for a long time. Like this book came out, and then he was working on another book that I may have read samples of, because I ended up working on his website and kind of like working with him remotely. Like I met him a couple times. Like he published short stories on his website, like through me, that I was basically line editing, copy editing, because they were older stories he was dredging up. I was like, oh, I think this sentence needs a, so yeah, crazy, wild. But awesome. He has not published a book in 20 years.
Oh,
he wow. Slipped off the radar. Yeah, without going into too much of his personal life, he slipped off the radar, and he's just now reemerged, like on Instagram, and like we've connected a little bit, but he's kind of reemerging and working on something that I don't know if it's nonfiction or fiction, but it's inspired by the work he's been doing, by the job he's had working at a mental institution in Tennessee, I think it was, which is like exactly something Phineas Poe in his novels would do, and he's so. I hope he is writing and there's something forthcoming because he is an absolutely amazing writer, but I'm
wondering if that mental institution is called Bolivar, because I lived in Tennessee for a while and everybody would be like, "You're going to Bolivar."
I don't know. I could find out. Yeah, he's it's been radio silence for 20 years. I mean, I have another author friend of mine who knows him and is inspired by him. Who's also a fantastic writer, and I, about every 5 years, I would text my buddy and be like, "Hey, have you heard from Chris? Is he live? How's he?" It's like, he might have another book coming soon. I hope. But in the meantime,
I have a question
the Phineas Poe trilogy is out there. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, is this a trilogy that ends, or did he leave you hanging? So you need another.
I think it ends. Each book ends. So it's not. It wasn't like he's writing it. Yeah, it's less of a trilogy, and I mean, it is 3 books, but it's like it's sort of a serialized.
Yeah,
that's not even the right word. It's just another. Each book is a very self-contained adventure of this guy. Because like I said, I read this book having not read the first 2, and it wasn't confusing. There were references to events and characters and people. One of the main characters from the first one is in the third one, but he does such a good job of kind of like reestablishing and reminding you of the emotional stakes and trauma connected to this other person, because he's constantly just rehashing it and
he's just traumatizing you over and over and over again.
Well, he does say time is circular.
The books, each book has a very satisfying ending. And is a self-contained unit. They're all great.
Well, we will look for him on Instagram and include that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Is there anything? I mean, it clearly has had a big, meaningful impact on your life and kind of your understanding of yourself and your identity. Are there any particular moments that you can think of when you've kind of turned back to this book to help yourself through something, or to like reconnect with yourself or anything like that?
I don't know if it's to help myself through something, but I think I definitely turned to this book. I think I turned to this book when things are getting dark, and things are getting dark, and I feel kind of not spinning out of control, but I feel like I have a very tenuous grasp on what it is I want, either personally or artistically. Like I will turn back to any of these books and just like flip it open and read a chapter. Just to like, it's not even like I'm doing it with like a mission and like, oh well, now I've read this and now I can go out and conquer the world. It's like I have that little touchstone of like, oh man, this writing is beautiful, and now I've got some of this imagery in my head a little bit. It's something about it is very calming. Also worth noting, I first read the book when I think I had just had a horrible breakup. So like there's a lot swirling around in my head. This was like the book arrived the same week that I like went out and bought a bottle of scotch and a Tom Waits album, so it's like, how was I not already a noir fan? Like, I mean,
first off, and also like, what album?
At that point, it was Blood Money, I believe.
Oh, sure.
It had, just come out. So I was like, ooh, but it was literally like I was engaged to someone, we broke up, and my first response was, I think I need a bottle of scotch and a Tom Waits album. Like,
sorry.
I mean, it's perfect.
That makes sorry.
Absolutely.
The only difference we would probably make is like, what if it was bourbon?
And a Jason Isbell album. Bourbon and a Jason Isbell album.
It's odd. This book has a very special place in my heart, partially for some of those reasons, partially because of just the artistry of it. And it also, I got the book at a time in my life that's very close to, or there's kind of a before and after in my life, and not that reading this book was it, but like it's part of this transitional period for me that like I don't think I was a fully baked, fully formed adult human until all of those events happened. And one of the events was reading this book and following the direction it took me.
That's what I was about to say. It seems like it's a very directional touch point for you, or you said touchstone earlier, but it does seem like it provides you with, however, not necessarily linearly, not necessarily in a linear fashion, but it seems like it does help you find some clarity and have a better understanding of yourself. Yeah.
It provided some focus because, like I said, I don't allow myself the luxury of enjoying something without at some point reflecting like, well, what is it about this thing I like? And this was one of those things. It touched me so much that I was like, well, what is it? Okay, it's a neo-noir. Well, that means I like noir, which I knew. I mean, I knew, but I was like, oh, okay. So my personal thing is I always like, well, let's go backwards now. And I read this, and then I rented every movie under the sun. I read a bunch of Jim Thompson. Like I just staggered my way backwards. It's like, oh yeah, this feels right. Now that's in there.
Yeah. Because like when we get destroyed, or at least I know, like when I get destroyed by something in life, by an event or a series of events or anything like that, there's a rebuilding that has to happen of myself. And I can't just go with the materials that I had before, right? Like I've got to bring some new stuff in. So it seems like this kind of provided a new pillar and a new understanding of yourself. Yeah,
absolutely.
I love it so much. Thank you.
I'm glad this is the one I picked. It was the inevitable.
Yeah. I am too. No, this is perfect. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Kareem.
Of course.
Now, is there anything, since you are like Austin famous, is there anything happening right now? We will get this out in a timely manner. So if there's anything that you would like to promote or that you're working on or anything like that, or can we direct people to anything?
So there's nothing immediately pressing as far as like productions. I'm working on a lot of, film auditions and going out and shooting a thing here and a thing there, but nothing that's going to be out anytime soon. But my improv troupe, P-Graph, we perform every Thursday night at the Hideout Theater. That's hideouttheater.com. And my acting resume and reel and all the photos and all that good stuff is at my website, KareemBadr.com. There's one more thing. There's one more thing. I just remembered. So sorry. This Sunday, I'm going into the recording studio again with my band to start the mixing process on our album. So very soon I will have some songs from my band Concrete Horse to release into the world. Which it's an old school 70s like metal band.
Amy would love it. Yeah,
So
that'll be out soon. So
Okay.
I guess I am doing it.
You are doing a lot of things, and we will include all of that in the show notes. And yeah, this was just so wonderful. Thank you for spending time with us and sharing both this work and your experiences with it. This is the part of the podcast where someday we will answer somebody's request for a personalized selection for them. Unfortunately, dear listener, that is not today. So,
because no one has asked.
I'm sorry, because no one's done it.
Yes.
Should we kill this segment? I don't know. That's also not
we
for
should
today. Someday it's going to happen.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Maybe of the people who write in to you, they will receive one of your personal favorite good bones in return in the mail, and that's incentive for them to engage. You'll send them a thing.
Ooh. I'll have to check our budget because we also don't quite yet have any Patreon subscribers. But all of this is look, here's the thing. I also love a physical book. Unsurprising, I'm sure. Because how can you be friends with it if it's not in front of you in paper? Yeah. It's not weird at all. Anyhow, someday we will give somebody a selection and also potentially a physical rendering of that selection. So budget dependent. But thank you, dear listener, and thank you, Kareem, and thank you, Amy, and thank you, me. And thank you for joining us as we go finding good bones.